elected official comment line. That's clever.
Good morning, Commissioner Steve Schleiker, El Paso County Assessor. Yeah, I thought I had a little bit of time there. I
We
wanted
can
to
come
come
back to
before
you if
you.
you'd like.
What's that?
I said we can come back to you if you'd like.
No, that's okay. I wanted to come before you all. You probably have seen in the media, also in some written articles in regards to my office, and also the hot topic, short-term rentals, Airbnbs here in El Paso County. One thing I would just want to share, and I've been sharing this with a lot of our public, is basically the assessor's roles and responsibilities. One of which is, what is my role as the elected assessor here in El Paso County? First and foremost, and I take it very serious, is to ensure fair and equitable taxation through fair and equitable valuation and protecting our citizens' private real property and personal property rights. But the responsibilities that I do daily, and also my staff, is to discover, list, classify, and value all taxable and exempt property here in El Paso County. And as you know, we're the largest county here in the state of Colorado when it comes to parcel size. I will share with you, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, has been a topic of conversation here locally and also throughout the state. The state legislature has been discussing short-term rentals, Airbnbs. They have also been a major topic of discussion with the Colorado Assessors Association in regards to what do we do with these types of properties. Just to share with you, and I asked Steve to come because one thing I wanted to share is look at legislation, court rulings on these type of properties and things like that, and Steve has done a great job, but the terminology and definitions per statute as of today. Long-term or extended stay are properties that are leased or rented for 30 days or longer, and it's those properties that get to stay at the residential assessment rate of 7.15%. An example of those types of properties are apartments or folks that are leasing out their homes or renting out their homes for more than 30 days, so long-term 6-month, 1-year leases. Short-term stays are properties that are leased or rented for 30 days or less. And those type of properties are hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, and they are at the non-residential rate, which is 29%. So as you can see, the concern that I have as assessor is when you're sitting here looking at short-term rentals, which fit the definition of short-term stay, they should be valued at the non-residential rate, and it will quadruple their taxes. So residential versus non-residential, as I stated, is the residential rate is 7.15% per the Gallagher Amendment and 29% for non-residential. I'll share with you some of my concerns. One thing is I want to share with you, El Paso County is not going to implement this program for quite some time. There are a number of concerns that I have, and I feel as assessor, I need to do my homework basically to look into this. I also feel this is a state matter, not a local matter. I will share with you there are a handful of assessors that have already picked these properties up as non-residential, and in my opinion, they really used a shotgun approach. Because part of it is, as I just stated, my responsibilities are to discover, list, classify, and value. How do you find these properties? That is a major challenge. The other thing is, how do you classify them? What is owner-occupied? What is not owner-occupied? Is somebody renting out a bedroom, their basement? What's not owner-occupied? There are a lot of obstacles, but here are my concerns that I just want to share with you. The knowledge of business owners. I believe a lot of these business owners have no idea the difference between short-term, long-term, non-residential, residential. Issues with lenders. Many of these property owners probably got lending on the property VA, FHA, as it being their primary single-family residence. And once the lender finds out the taxes have quadrupled and on the assessor side it's being valued as a non-residential commercial property, would the lender call the note? That is a possibility. That is a major concern, especially here in our community. We have a lot of veterans and active duty military that are here for 3 years. They purchase a property and then they're stationed or they go overseas. I don't think that is a worry we need to put on our veterans or our active duty. Increased utility rates. Going from residential to commercial, will their utility rates go up? What about homeowners insurance? Many folks don't understand when you're going from a residential and now this being used as a commercial property, is the homeowner's insurance rate's going to be different. Subject to the business personal property taxation, because then if you are valued as a non-residential, a business, you have to classify all of the equipment, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment associated with that business, and you are subject to the business personal property taxes. Another concern I have, HOA, covenants, county, city, zoning. Property valuation. So in accordance with our Tabor Amendment, which was voted back in 1992, there's 3 approaches to value for a licensed appraiser, which is cost, market, and income. But when we as voters voted in Tabor in 1992, I can only use the sales comparison market approach to value single-family residential properties. Once you turn it to a non-residential commercial property, you can use all 3 approaches, which cost, market, and income. Here is the concern I have as your assessor. Let's say you're in a neighborhood where the median values are $250,000, but this Airbnb is making a lot of money, and based on the income, you have a $400,000 home in that subdivision. It's going to be an outlier, so there's some problems I see there as well. As mentioned, my responsibilities is, again, to discover. That is going to be a huge problem. I know the city of Colorado Springs is having them getting permitted, but I'm not the city of Colorado Springs assessor. I'm the El Paso County Assessor. And I'm also responsible for discovering these properties up Highway 24, down in Security, Whitefield, out east, Monument, Black Forest. So there is a major concern I have there. Listing them and classifying them, you know, what's owner-occupied, what's not owner-occupied, and also have to look at the impact this possibly will have on my office. This will be a big impact on my office. Here's my plan. Time out. Bottom line. I feel that this is a state matter, not a local matter, because the state is not being fair and equitable when you have a handful of assessors already picking these up, and they really have used, like I said, the shotgun approach. So I've actually talked to a couple property owners who own Airbnbs here in other counties, and they're like, Steve, I'm getting the residential assessment rate in El Paso or Teller or Elbert, but why am I paying commercial in Summit or Fremont or Park County? So this is a state matter, and all assessors, 64 county assessors, need to be on the same page. Proposed legislation. I have reached out to some of our legislators and, you know, take a look at it as far as how do you go about discovering and listing these type of properties, and work with our legislators in this upcoming legislative session in regards to maybe the possibility is, why don't we just look at leaving short-term rentals at the residential assessment rate and bring down the hotel, motel, and bed and breakfast to the residential assessment rate? So those are discussions that I really want to have with our elected officials here in El Paso County and other counties as well. Education, I feel, is extremely important. Many of you have known me for many years. I'm a proactive type of guy, not a reactive type of guy. I think education is critical in this matter when you're talking short-term rentals and Airbnbs. I plan on I am meeting with our public information officer tomorrow. We plan on setting up a number of meet and greets with stakeholders, property owners, things like that, neighborhood HOAs, and just to, you know, address, here is what current statute is, here's the difference between short-term, long-term, the difference between the non-residential rate and the residential rate, and what my plan is. Because I am of the opinion that many folks that operate these type of businesses don't know this information. So that's my plan is, you know, here over the next year is really work with legislation and do a host of meet and greets and educate our public. But this is something that the assessor's office, myself, is not going to implement sometime soon. Any questions?
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you said there's already a definition in the state statute or legislative determination on this. Would instead of the state legislature again making a new definition on what fits or wasn't fit, sounds like their definition, would the Attorney General, is it within his role to just say this does fit or doesn't fit for everybody, every county?
You know, and that's a possibility. I haven't thought about that. You know, as working with the Attorney General, my thought is just remove the 30-day stay. You know, it is my opinion. It is. Commissioner, we probably have between 3,000 and 3,500, in my estimation, short-term rentals, Airbnbs in El Paso County, not City of Colorado Springs, but the county as a whole. We got about 50 bed and breakfasts. What would be smarter? Do we reduce the bed and breakfast down to the residential assessment rate and just leave the short-term rentals at the residential assessment rate? But I will definitely talk with Steve and look as far as what the Attorney General, what they're able to do.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Steve, for coming here and putting this on public record, some of the challenges. You mentioned a timeout, and I presume that that amount of time where you're not going to enforce might vary with time, but what's your current plan for that timeout right now? You had mentioned it to me once before. I can't remember what it was. Is it sometime in 2020 or 2021?
Right. Commissioner, that's a great question. Right now, it would be premature of me if I'm looking at trying to work with our legislators in the upcoming legislative session. So let's see how that process works in 2020. In addition to that, by statute as well, is I wouldn't be able to convert these properties over until January 1 if there's a change of use. But what I'm looking at is if statute does not change, if there's no change whatsoever in the definition of short-term rental, is then looking at implementing this 2021 payable 2022. So, but the thing is, there's also a court case we need to consider, which was the O'Neill versus Cornelius. And I'll have Steve talk a little bit about that. And it's a recent court case regarding short-term rentals as far as mixed-use property, so owner-occupied, where the assessor lost that case. And I don't know if Steve wants to talk a little bit about it.
Good morning, Commissioner Stephen Klafke, Assistant County Attorney. I won't get into too much of the details, but I think what your assessor is doing is mirroring kind of the ruling of that case. Essentially, the cautionary tale of that case is don't use a shotgun approach when classifying these properties, because the court is going to look at individual facts of each of these VRBOs. So really the court would be looking for, is there a for-profit motive versus is this just sort of an occasional thing that an owner might be doing? And I think there's a presumption that it's residential because it's a residence primarily, but then there's some other use going on inside of it that requires a factual inquiry. So I think that's exactly what your assessor is doing, is taking a step back and saying, a shotgun approach doesn't necessarily work. Let's see if we can maybe get the legislature to address this, and then if not, let's see what we can do internally here to make sure that everyone is being treated fairly and equitably.
So I appreciate you're taking kind of a measured, let's work through this kind of an approach. It does seem to me also that's appropriate to work with the state legislature and try to get clarification, because you had mentioned in some cases definitions of how to apply this as an assessor are nebulous and subject to your own interpretation and a court's interpretation. Right. So, if you need any help working with the legislators, I'm sure you've got it, but I'd be happy to be part of that. I got a lot of bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs on the west side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I will share with you, this statute is over a decade old. And the reason why it came about is at that time the legislature wanted to separate out the hotels, motels, B&Bs. And 10, 15 years ago, the big thing was timeshares. And it was, our mountain communities that, folks were sitting here looking at, getting into timeshares, things like that. What I feel is our state has not kept up with the changes that we're seeing here in our society, when it comes to housing, is the challenges now with, tiny homes. You have to ask the question, does the assessor pick that up, or since it's on a trailer, does our clerk and recorder pick that up? So, you're sitting there looking at those challenges, and the other challenges is now short-term rentals and Airbnbs. So this statute really, it's just vaguely defined, and right now the definition of Airbnb short-term rentals fits right there in the short-term stay category, 30 days or less. But things need to change, in my opinion, up at the state level to reflect the changes that we're seeing here in our communities. But like I said, this is a very hot topic amongst assessors. So El Paso County is not the only one where, many assessors are having issues in regards to what's the next step. And so our summer conference is next week, and we're going to have a session on this, and I will share with you what is brought back from the Colorado Assessor Association summer conference.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams.
I just have one comment, and I appreciate the update. one thing many individuals don't realize, at one point I worked in an industry where we investigated mortgage fraud. When you apply for a mortgage, you fill out all of that paperwork, but there's one little question: are you going to rent your property out? And so when someone even thinks about taking 2 rooms in their house and turning them into an Airbnb, they've violated part of that clause of their mortgage. So I appreciate you bringing out that fact that even this can affect every single homeowner who just wants to rent out 1 room. They've never probably thought about that when they signed their mortgage, they said they weren't going to do that. So it's an important fact that I appreciate that you brought out in the articles that we've seen in the newspaper. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Bremer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Steve, thank you. Thank you for clarifying and being here today to educate us as well.
Absolutely.
And again, like my colleague said, get this kind of on public record. You know, we make decisions every single day that impact the economic vitality of this region. And we do our best to remove barriers where we can and ensure that this can continue to be a thriving community and encourage enterprise. So in doing so, it's our role, I think it's your role as in your elected position as well, to think a few steps down the road, to think about what the long-term impacts are, the mechanisms by which it's actually, you know, it will impact everything from your budget in your office to the level of appeals that you guys are dealing with. So I appreciate your thoughtful and thorough approach to the long-term implications and what it would mean. Ultimately, you know, it's all of our job to ensure that El Paso County stays a wonderful place to live, to work, to play, to own a home, and to visit. And
Right.
those are kind of, that's a big role, it's a big job, and it takes all of us understanding our part in that. So I appreciate your attention to that, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will share with you, government should not be putting people out of business. And, you know, it's one of those things where that's why I feel so strongly in regards to the education piece. You know, worst case scenarios, legislation doesn't change, but it allows those property owners to make an informed decision to change their business model if need be. And that's why I'm like, you know what, I'm just trying to be proactive, not reactive, and this is going to take some time. The citizens of this county deserve me to do that homework and educate them along the way, as well as you. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. But like I said, is next time I come before you, we'll be sharing with you a host of meet and greets that I'm setting up with Ryan Parcell to meet with these folks. I got a feeling they're going to be pretty popular.
Our citizens are lucky to have you watching out.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, anything else for our county assessor? Want to yell at him for having your property taxes go up? All right.
Thank you.
We'll move on.